Hello and welcome to week 7 of our small worm bin update. We start with the usual. Although it's not smell-o-vision, there is no obnoxious smell coming from the bin, which is a good sign. On the surface I can't see many, if any, potworms, which means the bedding is probably reasonably well balanced and quite good. And if you look on the sides, there isn't a whole lot of evidence of castings all the way to the top, which would indicate that the worms are actually leaving the bin. There is some castings along here, you'll see, but this is the level to which the wet cardboard was stacked above the bedding, so the worms probably have been working in that area. Let's just have a look at how the worms are. Okay, well, you can see they're quite active, which is a good sign. There's a big clump of them there. Now, these worms have been incredibly stressed. About 2.5–3 weeks ago, the bin got incredibly warm. The bedding in the bin got very warm. And then the week before last, we had a disaster where one of the bins, which was draining water, drained the water into this bin. So first of all, they almost got burnt to death, and then they got drenched. Worms will suffocate if they're left in water for too long. So they were very stressed. So I don't want to leave them under any sort of great amount of light for too long. But you can see these guys are moving around, which is good. I didn't feed the bin last week because I wanted it to dry out a little bit more. And one of the things I did was I literally halved the bin, so I quite literally took fistfuls of the bedding and whatever worms was in it, removed them and put them into one of the pits, and I just added loads and loads of cardboard and paper, which you can see here. Now that's actually a food stock for the worms, so the worms will eat this. So it's not, I wasn't too worried about not feeding the bin last week, but the paper and cardboard has done a good job of soaking up a lot of the excess water. So this is quite good actually. I think I will feed it this week. Yep, the worms are spread quite well throughout the bin, which is also a good sign. If they were sort of mostly in one corner or another, or all in the centre, it might be a good indication that there is something wrong in the parts of the bin that they're avoiding. But you can see that the worms here are not avoiding any particular part of the bin at all. They're quite well spread out. But there's a very big clump of them in the middle, so there must have been something there that they liked. Yeah, so this feels quite good actually. A lot of cardboard in it, a lot of paper in it, not a lot of unfinished food, so they seem to have settled and got back to being quite productive. A lot of very small worms that aren't quite adults in the bin. Still, you can see there's no clitellum on this guy, so that's how you know he's not an adult. Same with this guy here. So still quite a lot of immature worms in the bin. This bin is 12 inches deep. It's 18 inches across and it's 14 inches wide, so this bin can comfortably hold about 1,000 worms. Any more than 1,000 worms, they won't be very happy, and you may find a lot of worms trying to leave the bin, just because there'll be too much competition for whatever food is in the bin, and they also need space to grow. One of the limiting factors for the size to which a worm will grow is the amount of space it has. The worms that I have in No, that's not an adult either. The worms that I have in the pits are absolutely huge compared to these guys. and that's because the pits are 2 foot deep, 11 foot long and 7 foot wide. So although the population of worms is much larger, the worms themselves are a lot bigger. Is that a guy got it to tell him? Got the start of it. Yeah. This is a young adult. Okay. So we're going to feed the bin now. Sorry, the light on the phone has gone out because I haven't got enough battery. But I hope this will be bright enough for you guys to see what's going on. So we're in week 7. These are shaped like this because I was squeezing as much water as I could out of them. And you'll also see the green here, that's egg carton. These worms love egg cartons. So I'm adding a kilo of scraps to the bin across the surface. Again, you'll see a lot of videos where they'll feed one corner, then this one, then this one, then this one, then the middle, and then they rotate it round. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. It's a good way to feed your bins, but I like spreading the food across the top. I'm not worried about fruit flies because this is about 3 inches deep at the moment. That distance there is 9 inches, so there's 9 inches of shredded paper and cardboard across covering this bin, so covering these scraps, so it does a good job at keeping most of the fruit flies out. And the other thing is, if you feed just one corner and another corner, you'll bring, this is just my view, but you'll bring most of the worms to that corner, and then regardless of whether this bit of the bin has been worked enough or not yet by the worms, they will just leave there and go to the food. They'll then go to the food over here, they'll then go to the food over here. I don't think, and again it's just my view, that it's getting the worms to work in the most productive manner. I think it's much better if they're spread evenly throughout the bin. You layer your food across the top, and then they'll just work across that as one complete layer. And here's the last food ball. So that's it. Week 7, 7 kilos of food. And because I think it's about 3 weeks since I added some ground eggshells, I'm going to add some eggshells. Oh, well, that's an escaped worm that unfortunately for him landed in this little container which I just had thrown into one of the bins, and oh dear. Alright, so he obviously escaped one of the bins and fell straight into this ground eggshells. That's another little guy there. They've preserved them quite well actually, so he can go back into the compost. I do keep telling these worms to not leave the bin, that it's a dangerous world out there, but they just don't listen. Okay, so we'll give them a sprinkling of eggshells, which, just as a reminder, adds calcium to the finished compost, which is an excellent nutrient for your plants. It will help to keep acidity down in the bin, which will keep the worms happy. And the worms love it because they take it into their gizzard and use it to grind up any food stuff they take in. So that's it for week 7. I'll see you next week.